So you've probably heard about the Epstein Files, right? For years, this one question has just been hanging out there, echoing across the internet and through the halls of power. What is actually in them? Well, the answer is a lot more complicated and way more revealing than just a simple list of names. And let's be real, the thing everyone's talking about, the thing you see all over social media, is the list. This idea of one single document that names every single powerful person involved in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. It's become this huge focus of speculation.
But here's the thing, that's not really how it works. The truth is, there is no single list. Instead, what we're actually seeing is this fractured, incomplete, and honestly pretty confusing release of thousands of documents from totally different places. And understanding why it's so fractured, well, that's the key to this whole story.
To really get a handle on this, you've got to know that the Epstein Files aren't just one big pile of papers. No, they're the product of two completely separate, high-stakes battles for public access, both unfolding at the same time. Okay, so on one hand, you have these court documents. These come from a civil lawsuit that accuser Virginia Giuffre filed against Ghislaine Maxwell way back in 2015. A judge looked at it and basically said, you know what, the public has a right to see this. Then, on the other hand, you've got this massive treasure trove of files from the Department of Justice's own investigations. For these, Congress literally had to pass a law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, to force the DOJ to release them. So you see, two totally different pipelines, different rules, which is why this whole thing feels so staggered and confusing. And because of this fractured release, what we've ended up with is this intense fight for disclosure. Especially with the DOJ files, it's become super clear there's a huge gap between what the law required and what we, the public, have actually gotten to see.
And get this, the frustration isn't just coming from the public or the media. This quote here is from Congressman Thomas Massie. He's one of the guys who wrote the law demanding the release. He's basically saying the Justice Department is completely ignoring what they were told to do. I mean, when the lawmakers themselves are furious, you know something's up.
And this really puts the problem into perspective. The DOJ has admitted that what they've released so far, it's less than 1% of the total. They're sitting on over 2 million more documents. They've assigned more than 400 lawyers just to go through it all. The sheer scale is just mind-boggling. So what's the holdup? Why are so many pages just blacked out? Well, the DOJ points to the law itself, which gives them permission to redact certain things. They can and should protect the identities of victims. They have to remove any illegal materials, obviously, and they can also hide information that might mess up an ongoing investigation or anything that's classified. This is their official reason for why everything is taking so long. You can probably guess what happens next. When you have a slow, heavily redacted release like this, it creates a vacuum, and misinformation loves a vacuum. For instance, you might have seen that wild claim that Stephen Hawking was involved in abuse. The reality? The documents show an email where Epstein actually wanted to pay a reward to anyone who could disprove false rumors about him. And this whole idea of a client list? That's also misleading. Yeah, a lot of names are in the documents, but most of them aren't accused of anything. And as for bombshells, a lot of what's in the files just confirms stuff we've known for years, like Epstein's connections to people like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. But look, to really understand why we're fighting for these files today, you have to zoom out. You have to look back, because this whole struggle for transparency, it's a direct result of decades of failure by the very systems that were supposed to stop Epstein in the first place. And this timeline, it just lays out a really shocking pattern. I mean, think about it. The FBI gets a detailed warning from a victim, Maria Farmer, way back in 1996 and does nothing. Then in 2008, prosecutors give Epstein this secret sweetheart of a plea deal that lets him off with barely a slap on the wrist. After he dies in 2019, the DOJ actually blocks its own internal watchdog from investigating that shady deal. And now today, they're missing the legal deadline that Congress set. It's just failure after failure, obstruction after obstruction. And the victims' lawyers saw this dysfunction up close. Attorney Spencer Kuvin said that the prosecutors just didn't seem to get it. He said they intimidated victims and seemed totally uninformed about sex trafficking, creating a system where the girls felt blamed and just didn't trust the FBI from the very beginning. You know, with all the talk about documents and politics and redactions, it's so easy to forget what's really at the heart of this. The ultimate human cost. We have to remember that we're talking about real people whose lives were just completely shattered. And that's why this is so crucial. A huge reason we even have these court documents is because of one person, Virginia Giuffre. She was one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, a fierce warrior who just refused to be silenced. And it was her lawsuit against Maxwell that cracked open that first door to transparency. But tragically, after a lifetime spent fighting not just her abusers, but the very system that protected them, Virginia Giuffre's battle came to a heartbreaking end. The weight of it all, this decades-long struggle, it just took an unimaginable personal cost. Her family's words are just a devastating reminder of the real stakes. They said she was a fierce warrior and a light that lifted so many survivors, but that ultimately, the weight of the abuse became unbearable.
And her personal tragedy connects right back to those systemic failures. See, after all this, the DOJ did an internal review of its handling of the Epstein case, and it concluded that prosecutors had merely used poor judgment. For victims' attorneys like Brad Edwards, that conclusion wasn't just inadequate, it was offensive. It was, in his words, a way of letting everyone off the hook.
So that brings us to where we are now, and to the final question. This whole fight for the files has turned into this ugly, deeply politicized battle, and it raises some serious doubts about whether true accountability is even possible. I mean, on one side, you have top Democrats flat out accusing the Trump administration of a cover-up, of violating federal law by withholding documents. And on the other side, the administration calls itself the most transparent in history, while strategically publicizing newly released photos featuring former Democratic President Bill Clinton, which, shifts the political focus. It's become a political football. And so that's where we're left. After all the pain, the systemic failures, and the political gamesmanship, we have to ask ourselves a really tough question. Even if every single page is eventually released, can documents alone ever deliver justice for the lives that were shattered? That remains the unanswered question.